Hello, 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 and welcome to Theme Park School, a themed experience educational podcast. The long name gets easier every single time.
Second nature.
This is episode 5 of the podcast. I'm your host, Carson Luter. Tonight, very, very pleased to be joined by someone who plays a crucial part in our themed experience MFA program here at the University of Central Florida. He is, before I even say this, so part of the goal of this podcast was obviously to hear stories from students and who go to different programs or are in different educational backgrounds and all that stuff. But I was also really hoping to seek out insight from educators as well, because, you know, being an educator of themed experience is interesting and new and exciting.
Absolutely.
So tonight, he is the Chief Creative Officer of Harves Creative Group. Creative Group?
Harves Global Entertainment.
Sure. Harves Global Entertainment Group. But more importantly, Professor...
It still feels weird.
Professor Wallace.
Yeah.
It's Mike Wallace is here tonight.
And I'm happy to be here.
Appreciate it.
Your podcast is now a kindergartner. How does that feel?
Oh, it's 5? I'm trying to... Because I think it's like... In terms of actual time, it's like 2 months old.
Right.
Still an infant.
That's not nearly as cool.
So, Mike, was wondering, just because I've heard your story, but the problem that I have, and I complain about it frequently on this podcast, is you hear a lot of the same story of blah, blah, blah. How did you get into the industry? Oh, I was, walking down the street one day and a door opened up and Splash Mountain was being built inside and someone yanked me in with a vaudeville cane and now I'm in themed entertainment.
Yep.
But I think that your story is unique and still mostly relevant to kind of the scale of things today. So if you wanted to impart your education journey, your career journey, and then finally how you got to teaching our class.
Sure. Yeah. There was no tripping over the caution tape at a construction site for me. I knew pretty early on that I wanted to do something creative that wasn't fine art.
Yeah.
I blame my 2 cousins that I was very, very close with growing up. One was a builder and one was a brilliant artist. I spent a lot of my childhood trying to be better than them at those things, and I never was. But it gave me the idea that when I got into high school and when I was going to college that I wanted to be an architect. So leaving high school, I went to the University of Florida. I joined their architecture school. I finished my undergrad there in architecture. It had helped that the construction cousin had been giving me kind of summer work through high school, framing houses. I think it was because I was very inexpensive labor, but it was a good learning experience anyway. But by the time I was done with my undergrad, I spent a little bit of time in a traditional architect's office and realized that it really wasn't what I thought it would be. Your image of the kind of star architect thing is, I'm going to be doing the big marquee buildings. I'm going to be doing stuff that's getting this global recognition. And no, I was, copying spec home railings and AutoCAD all the time. And, the most exciting thing I would get would be like a CVS. So it wasn't what I had built it up in my mind to be.
Yeah.
So about 6 months into that quote unquote career path, I started speaking with an old professor that I had during my undergrad. I had taken an elective of scenic painting, which was in the theater group at UF. And he said, hey, we have assistantships, we have a grad program in scenic art, scenic design for the theater. Why don't you come try that? And I said, yeah, let's do it. And that was meant to be a 3-year program, but by the end of my first year, I had developed some contacts at Universal Orlando, and they, TJ Manarino, actually, who's the director of art and design then and still now, I think he's a vice president now, but he was willing to meet with me. He was willing to review my portfolio, and they kindly offered me a consultant position the summer after my freshman year of grad school, first year of grad school, and I never looked back. I moved down to Orlando from Gainesville over a weekend. I kind of had my, I think I showed off my portfolio on a Saturday. I got a job offer on a Monday, came down here for orientation on a Friday, went back to Gainesville, packed up my stuff on Saturday, moved down here Sunday, and started work Monday.
Yeah.
And it was a whirlwind of a weekend. My girlfriend at the time, my now wife, thought I was insane. But yeah, that was almost 15 years ago now.
Wow.
And I spent a decade of that with Universal, doing everything from Halloween Horror Nights and Mardi Gras and Macy's and Grinchmas with Universal Entertainment to the Harry Potter projects with Universal Creative. The last project that I worked on there was Volcano Bay. I left Universal right when Volcano Bay opened, actually just shortly before, to become the creative director at Falcon's Treehouse. Cecil McPurry, amazing. He and I actually have a very, very similar background. Traditional architects that got kind of bored, found themed entertainment, and took off from there. I was with them for about 3.5 years, and joined up actually just this past June with Harves, and now we're building kind of location-based entertainment, smaller scale, immersive exhibits, environments, activity centers, that kind of thing globally, and plan to be doing that for the foreseeable future.
And you mentioned this kind of previously, but how did you get into teaching for this? And I kind of heard a little bit of this story, but is this something that you always wanted to do as well? Like kind of a thought that you had in the back of your head, like, oh yeah, I could teach this definitely too.
Not at all. I am always pleasantly surprised when people listen to me just in general, and to think that a group of people would be relying on me for relevant information that will impact their careers was, nothing I ever thought would be a thing. But it's interesting because I've been around the formation of these theme park design degree programs for a while. I was lucky enough to get involved with University of Florida's version when they were trying to build it here at City Lab in Orlando. And I actually think that Cecil was the target when Peter, the program director,
What is he, the CEO of a company?
He's the president, chief creative officer, owner, grand poobah of Falcons. But he's actually on the board, the advisory board for the program here. I think Peter would have loved to have had him come and teach, but the reality is that, the time commitment when you're in that position is just too great. So Cecil introduced me to Peter as hey, what about Mike? I feel like he would be a great fit. He's, I guess, competent enough, Cecil felt at the time. And I started speaking with Peter in February, and it just all worked out that I was able to come here in the fall and pick up with you guys, the first annual cohort guinea pig master students in theme design.
Well, I think another thing that you bring to the table that I don't know, maybe Cecil knew at the time, maybe he didn't. So you've now worked for, and this is something that I've experienced too in my brief work experience in the industry. You've worked for a big guy, a medium kind of large guy, and then a small guy. Yeah. So I think that's kind of the three big avenues that people can go in this industry. You're working for a vendor, you're working for an operator, depending on what size the vendor is, like what's their scope, are they designing in-house? You've kind of seen it all.
Yeah, it's not planned at all, but it's definitely been, I've been fortunate to have had those different experiences. Yeah. It has taught me a lot specifically around, budget targets, capacity targets, things like that. When you're working for the big parks, when you're working for a Universal or a Disney, you can definitely get lost in the scale of what they do. Yeah. And as soon as you step away from that, you realize that they're really the only ones who get to play at that scale. Mm-hmm. But there are so many other amazing, creative, cool, immersive things that can be done much, much smaller than their scale. Sure. And, why not play in that sandbox for a little while,
That's the point with, like, being in Orlando. And I always picture Peter, like, he's just building this. He's, like, at a chessboard, and he's, like, moving his pieces forward. Like, as he builds
it's a giant game of Stratego or Risk or something.
His cabal of, like, themed entertainment all-stars, like, coming to the board, teaching classes, because just some of the people that he's been able to procure, like Mike West. Like, come on,
Right.
Mike West, you know? So, yeah, and it's always funny. I see him as like this, and you could tell he's having a good time with it too, like getting all these people together. And he's like pulling from his former students that he's had in the past and friends that he's made along the way.
Well,
He
the
loves
perfect thing about this program is just where it's positioned.
Yeah.
I mean, the fact that you're able to do it at UCF in Orlando, you're surrounded by some of the best the industry has to offer. And where some of the other programs exist, you know, Savannah College of Art and Design, you know, we have Ringling just down the state a bit. You really can't do that. You can't pull people who are actively in the industry every day to come in and teach or come in and do a guest lecture or something like that. So this is unique and I think uniquely positioned to succeed here, the way Peter's doing it.
Yeah. Speaking of our program, it's obviously this is the first year. Like we're literally 13, 14 months into this program's existence.
Right.
What do you think, just based off what you have already seen, where do you think you see this program going? Do you see this as now the template for other programs to come in terms of, because even the other two you mentioned, those are private schools.
Right.
And this has always been something that's been so driven by private art schools and having that curriculum base there. But this is the first time that UCF is how many thousands? It's one of the largest universities in the world.
Absolutely. Yeah,
So
you're opening the door to so many more people. And I think that's really evident in the class makeup. You know, specifically here, you know, you guys are your writers, your artists, your engineers, your attraction designers, 3D modelers. I mean, the breadth of talent just in this class is immense, and it lends itself to being more of a workplace type environment than, you know, a group of fine artists trying to understand attraction design, for instance, you know, or a group of architects trying to understand, you know, pull back far enough to see a bigger picture about a guest experience or a story, as opposed to, you know, worrying about how far apart the hallways are and the doors and all that kind of thing.
Yeah. So kind of moving into the thing I wanted to talk about next, obviously themed experience, and you even mentioned you've seen kind of the genesis of this as a formal form of education. I think even I've seen this as,
right?
Because I was, when I was applying to school in 2012, this did not exist. The one thing that existed, and I was hesitant about it until I got here and I realized how cool it was UCF's theme park management program.
Right.
Because I didn't know how kind of tied into creative design it is. Universal Creative has their hand in that school as well as this school. It's really a testament to the fact that operations and creative are so intertwined. And one can't exist without the other. So, I was hesitant about that program at first, but eventually once I took a class there, I was like, okay, this is where I need to be for sure for now. But having a actual themed experience creative art design program is just such a last maybe 4 or 5 years thing, you know?
Right.
So how do you picture the newness? Are you worried about how it's going to go from here? Are you excited about the future that this can hold? Are we going to be going to, you know, huge, I'm saying this because we have a small academic conference right now, but academic conference with people from all over the world, thousands of people coming. Are you hopeful and stuff like that? I don't know. What do you see this as a field of study?
I mean, I think the best possible outcome for me is that this is preparing people for this very specific workforce. That was what attracted me to the first version that I was interacting with University of Florida. That's definitely what drew me here. Having been at Universal, having looked for talent, having tried to hire, you know, students who are new, who are extremely excited, but their experience to date was either very, very niche, all they've done was 3D model, all they've done was traditional architecture. This was a way to eliminate the 6 to 8 month learning curve that a new hire had when they showed up at the door. You know, a new Imagineer, a new Universal Creative, a new designer at Falcons. This is where I'm hoping all of this goes. You know, we end up with a tailored engineered, well thought out program that
Mm-hmm.
that provides us with designers. It doesn't provide us with artists and engineers and fine artists. It provides us with designers.
Sure.
And to be a designer, and I'm sure you're kind of seeing this specifically in this class, there are so many things that you have to understand
Oh yeah.
that are not your wheelhouse.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a huge amount of information that you're expected to not necessarily be an expert in, but at least have a kind of peripheral understanding of.
Mm-hmm.
And the more people that we can prepare for that life, the better off we're going to be. So I'm hoping that this really turns into something that's long lasting and ever growing. And what I mean, current times aside,
Sure.
The theme parks were exploding with new business, new attendance, new attraction designs. We were in a theme park renaissance,
Mm-hmm.
kind of a kind, after 2010, after kind of the first phase of Harry Potter.
For sure.
And we went away from attraction as a box and queue as a set of rails, and we kind of went more into, this is a fully immersive land and environment that I'm going to be in for 2 and 3 hours at a time.
Yeah.
And the subtlety of how to pull that off versus how to pull off what we were doing prior to that is crazy. The difference was night and day.
Yeah.
But guests responded to it, and now everybody's trying to do it. But it just made it that much harder on us as designers internal. We're kind of braving new waters, and it made it even tougher on new people coming into the industry.
Yeah.
This is alleviating a lot of that toughness.
Yeah. Yeah. We were definitely in a just like from today was the final installation of the Digital Thea Awards.
Yep.
And just being reminded of all the stuff that came out just last year.
Right.
Hagrid. The whole indoor Warner Brothers park that is absurd looking to me. It looks amazing.
And Abu Dhabi, it's amazing.
The coolest thing. You've been?
I haven't been yet, but I've been very close. I've been an hour and a half away and could not make it work with my flights.
That would have killed me. And then Galaxy's Edge was last year too.
Yeah.
So night and day, just like you said, from this year to the next, man.
And it's not really, you don't really have the luxury of time anymore.
Yeah.
If you look back to even the early 2000s, to open a big marquee e-ticket attraction, it was a 3-year, sometimes 4-year
Sure.
break between openings. Now it's no, you're going to open an e-ticket every year.
Mm-hmm.
The guests want it and they expect it. So your teams have to grow. You've got overlapping projects. You've got a design staff that was 50 people when I joined and was 1,700 when I left Universal. It's insane. The growth rates are off the charts.
Yeah. I didn't even think about that. You were there for that whole attraction a year model that they started at Universal. That was during your time. That's crazy.
I was part of the ebb and flow freelance group when I first got down here, where I was hoping I had to seek out people to figure out what the next project was going to be.
Yeah.
And my first year wasn't design. It was, well, you're going to do 3D modeling for 6 weeks, and then we need you to do Photoshop work for 8 weeks, and then we need you to do strike for Halloween for 4 nights, and then you're going to design this. I think I did an expo for a flooring company or something like that they contracted Universal to do. I mean, it was a whole gamut of crazy things, but all that then turned into, no, I'm going to devote 4 years of my life to one project.
Right.
And I'm going to come off it, and it's 4 years of my life to another project.
Yeah.
And back to back to back.
That's a big switch for you.
Oh God,
yeah. And that's all past 10 years. Uh-huh. Unbelievable. I think kind of a big problem that faces themed experience as a field of study is there's no textbook. Obviously, there's things that are, kind of resemble a textbook. Like there's that theme park design book.
Oh yeah, David Younger. He wrote that. Yeah.
That is, it's a textbook.
Right.
It's not. By no means is it perfect, and the only textbook that you'll ever need to, design this stuff. But what is your solution to that issue, you think? And coming off another thing, a problem that we had at Rosen all the time was people were getting upset in these theme park management classes where the only examples that you had to go to, and it's by instructor choice. It by no means is Disney and Universal the only case study. But we were going to classes and people would put on Rate My Professor, be like, man, this is Disney 101. Like all you're hearing about is Disney all year. So how do you teach these processes and these methods without a unified text and without just going to the same well over and over again of what the big guys are doing?
Right. Well, I think that's, and you know, you've experienced it firsthand in this class. My goal has been to not be the only voice you hear.
Yeah.
You know, I've tried to bring in guest lecturers, guest reviewers of different disciplines. They work for different companies. They have different skill sets, to understand that there's never going to be a one way to do something.
Sure.
And you're always going to fight that with the two big guys in town.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there's a philosophy that Disney relies on that's been very successful for them. There's a philosophy that Universal relies on that's been successful for them. It doesn't mean that either one of them is right or wrong. It just means that, okay, we found two different philosophies that make guests happy. Is there a third one, a fourth one, a fifth one?
Yeah.
Can we do it faster? Can we do it cheaper? Can we do it with more people, less people?
Right. And you kind of mentioned it right there, but my next question for you was, what is your specific teaching philosophy? And like you just brought it up, like definitely the thing. So I think the biggest thing that we've all learned as a class is it's okay to reuse stuff, not reuse stuff, but like essentially draw resources and information from past projects. Because I think we were in the mindset of everything has to be new every single time. We can't use any resources from previous stuff. And then like you already mentioned the guest speakers, and I think that has been totally invaluable to us.
My initial philosophy when I came into this, when I was working through the syllabus with Peter and trying to understand what was the goal that he wanted for the greater curriculum out of this class.
Yeah.
You know, and we're basically a medium-sized immersive studio. Mm-hmm. So I thought the best way that I could prepare you after leaving this class would be to treat this like it's an office.
Sure.
You know, the process is, all right, we do research, and then we do conceptual sketching, and then we do bubble diagramming, and then we do guest flow, and then we do planning, and then we do packaging, you know, and that is a traditional office's process to get you from an idea to a concept development deck that's going to get pitched to somebody for construction, whether it's internal, external, whatever. So if I can work with you guys as if I am your art director, providing you the feedback that I would provide you to try to make your project the most successful, real thing that we could build, you're going to get a little bit of all of those disciplines. You know, we talk about MEP space. We talk about, you know, functional relationships of a restroom to a kitchen to a storage space to a front of house. You know, all of the things that we would try to consider on a daily basis in a real office, we're talking about here.
Sure.
So it's less about needing a textbook, you know, to go back to that, and more about, okay, how would we really collaborate and get this done?
Yeah.
And how many different people can we leverage on the way to that end goal?
Yeah. I think what's most helpful to us, aside from just like individualized coaching, and like every time, like, so like we'll be presenting and you'll just see Mike pull out his marker and he like starts to get up and it's like, oh, he's going to
Everybody
the board
freaks
again.
Out. Oh, no.
But like that's invaluable, just to have like the individualized advice from you. It's like, okay, so here's how I think you could make this better.
Right.
That's something you lose, one, if you're over Zoom, for sure.
Sure.
And then two, if you're not in an environment where that kind of collaboration and that kind of teamwork and that understanding of the design process isn't agreed upon.
Right. I've been incredibly fortunate over the course of my career to work with some very, very good, spectacular even creative directors.
Sure.
I've spent a long time with Dale Mason working on Volcano Bay and Diagon Alley. Over the course of the Potter projects, I was able to work with Alan Gilmore and Stuart Craig and trying to pick up the way that they convey ideas was sort of how I formed my own design methodology.
Yeah.
And it's never been about presenting an idea or having an idea presented to me and then saying, well, I don't get it. do it again, show me another iteration.
Yeah.
It's, okay, well, have we thought about this way? Have we turned the page upside down? Have we mirrored things left to right? Have we examined this from every possible avenue, put on as many different hats as you can and revisit it?
Yeah.
And most of the time, they and now I take that into, I'm just going to start drawing things and see what happens. I would rather have a dry erase marker or a chalkboard or a digital tablet or something like that with hundreds of sketches on it by the end of a meeting.
Sure.
Than have 100 pages of written review.
Yeah. For sure.
And it feels like it's the right answer if you can work through it real time with the people who are designing it with you. You get real time feedback and you change your response right there on the fly, and by the time you're done, you're looking at a board of, hey, this might actually work.
Yeah. I think that's another advantage too of specifically for this class and 2 other classes that are preceding and following this class is we're putting most of our energy into a single project.
Yeah.
I think maybe a problem with other design classes traditionally is you do one, you're on to the next one.
Right.
I think this setup gives you time to understand what each of our individual strengths are, what we can continue to focus on for the specific project. And then instead of, kind of having 6 half-assed portfolio projects,
Right.
you have one fully fleshed, just masterfully concocted portfolio piece that's going to always go over well, as opposed to 6 kind of smaller things.
Right. And I think the added benefit of having the guest lecturers and the reviewers means that you guys get many, many opportunities to present your idea, so you can kind of feel confident in conveying that information to other people. I mean, it's all practice for exactly what happens in the industry.
Yeah. We love the guest speakers. Not that we don't trust you. You could have told us all the stuff that they said, and we would have totally believed you. But it's great to have them too.
They have loved it too.
Yeah.
Everybody who has come in has said, "Wow, these are the people who are going to be joining us, in the next year or two."
That's great.
And they're excited to get to work with you guys again.
Well, very good.
Yeah.
So last thing I wanted to talk about with you, kind of the umbrella topic. And this specific topic is coming off a conversation that we kind of had a couple weeks ago. And this is coming from 2 men. One is wearing Ghostbusters limited edition Reeboks.
And one is jealous that they didn't come in his size.
And the other one has built his own proton pack. How does being a fan of popular culture aid you in experiential design?
Oh, man. So I actually had a very, very lengthy discussion with some of our concept artists when I worked at Falcons about this topic.
Yeah.
And what it comes down to is shorthand and designing at speed.
Sure.
If you're familiar with more movie reference, artist reference, comic reference, game reference, anything that's current and trendy and cool, and I say to you, hey, I'm doing this water park and I really want this area to feel explorative. Think Tomb Raider meets Assassin's Creed and Uncharted, and for that to be the end of that statement, and everyone in the room to know what I'm talking about.
You've saved hours of time.
Oh my gosh. I don't have to look anything up. I don't have to show you any reference imagery. My concept artists have already taken off, and we just know what we're doing. So, and it goes beyond look and feel, obviously. You talk about tone
it's
of
tone,
films. You talk
character,
about
everything.
Yeah, character arcs and development. Even persona. When we're talking about developing story arcs and things like that. I want this person needs to be this character archetype, and I want them to live somewhere between Patrick Warburton and C-3PO. And it's like, oh Jesus, that sounds awesome. I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah,
I need a sarcastic robot.
That's awesome. So basically, what you're saying is, next week when I'm ignoring homework for this class and and playing the new Spider-Man game, I shouldn't feel bad about that.
Yeah, no, it's future reference material, sure.
That's awesome.
I'll be doing the same thing, I'm sure.
Yeah. So that's kind of everything that I wanted to hit with you.
Okay.
There were a couple. It's every time I'm like, these are the questions that I'm going to ask everybody every week. And then I swear, like 1 week, it's all going to come to a screeching halt and it's just going to crumble apart.
And you've been asking this of students to this point, right?
I know. And now it's like,
we'll see if
these
my
are gonna be
answers are
different
just
answers.
wildly different.
But that's good, though. We want the varied experiences.
Sure.
Okay, here we go. What you wish you knew then that you know now, and this can apply to anything. This
Gotcha.
program, your career, life in general.
I'll keep it tight to the career. What I know now is that it is okay to not have all the answers.
Yeah.
I was not aware of that when I first got here. You know, when I came from college into the industry, I was like, oh my gosh, there's so many things I don't know. I don't know the building numbers on Universal property. I don't know who manufactured the roller coasters. I don't know, what this particular piece of technology is called. That's fine.
Yeah.
The best thing that you can do is understand enough to know who to go find.
Oh yeah.
And ask who to get the answer from. And your list of things that you don't understand will get smaller over time. But I wouldn't claim even now that I know half of what I probably should or could, but I can pick up my phone and probably find you 10 people who know the answer.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a great answer, because I think there's so much pressure, especially on young people who are supposed to be like,
Sure.
The up and comers. There's an expectation in our heads, at least, that we need to know everything already.
Right. Well,
and
especially when
it's not the case.
When you're dealing with a discipline like this, like themed entertainment design,
no way.
We're mashing up like 9 or 10 other people's careers into one thing, and they go to school forever to get like 60% of the knowledge they need for their one thing.
Mm-hmm.
And now you're going to combine that with 10 other things.
Yeah. I mentioned that on the last episode, and I was like, trying so hard to think of something that doesn't at least like touch the border of themed entertainment.
Right.
And I was like, chef? I was like, no, we have chefs. Like there are chefs in themed entertainment, like people who develop, like creative develop like new theme park food.
Yeah.
Like
the recipe for butterbeer that
came
came from Universal's in our executive chef.
Yeah. Yeah. Crazy. So there's a question I ask everybody, and it's essentially like, what are you working with right now? What's your favorite software? But I think the more applicable question for you is, as a chief creative officer, like what is your kind of day-to-day?
What do I do? So as the chief creative officer of Harves, my day-to-day is everything right now. Yeah. My design studio is me, basically. That will hopefully change soon, but right now I am both the draftsman, I'm the renderer, I'm the modeler, I'm the presenter, I'm the construction admin. Like I'm all of those things.
Yeah.
Prior to this, my last role as creative director, I was really constantly back and forth between 3 softwares. I was in SketchUp, I was in AutoCAD, I was in Photoshop. Mm-hmm. I think outside of specialty roles within the creative studios, those are the 3 things that you should know, need to know. And then, if you need somebody who's an ace at, Maya or 3D Max, go get one.
Yeah. So you're the creative and the chief creative, it sounds like.
A little bit of everything right now, but I mean, to me, that's where the fun is. Like one of the drawbacks that I've found to advancement, I guess, for more lack of a better term, I guess.
Yeah.
The more I advance in the industry, the less design I get to do.
Sure.
And I kind of came to terms with it a couple of years ago where I just had to flip the switch in my brain that said, okay, the projects are no longer my product. My product is now my designers and my staff.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to make the best attraction. I'm trying to make the best attraction designer. And if I can build a team that is incredible, that's my goal. That's my project.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of where I've taken this now. And just by happenstance, moving into a small studio, kind of a startup design firm, I get to go back and play in all the old sandboxes that I used to
Yeah,
play in
exactly.
again.
That's exactly what I was thinking
So
about. Like,
it's fun.
yeah, your story is cyclical, and like God knows what the future holds for you.
Right.
You're still a young man. But like you said, you know, when we started out at Universal, you were doing this thing, and now you're back to
I
that.
get to do them all again. Yeah. The software really hasn't changed, but
Yeah.
the monitors are way bigger and the technology is way better.
And most people have 2 monitors now.
Exactly. Yeah, I have a Cintiq. I can draw on my monitor now. Like that was unheard of back in the day.
Yeah. All right, last question, then we'll say goodnight here. What is your favorite resource to learn about themed experiences?
Wow.
Or resources. Doesn't have to be a resource. Nobody has given me, I've asked that question every time, and no one's like, this, period, the end.
Right.
It's always like 5 things, which is fine.
So maybe I'll do some of the generic ones first.
Sure.
YouTube has been an incredible resource.
Yeah.
Being able to learn new things. So you have tutorials, you have techniques.
Mm-hmm.
Being able to visit places that you haven't visited yet.
Right.
You know, front row, full ride-throughs of every attraction in the world. It's all there. I do have a substantial library of design books, artists that inspire me, projects that inspired me, things like that. But what I rely on most now, my go-to resource are the colleagues that I have and have had.
Mm-hmm.
I would rather spend an evening talking with people that I used to work with about what they're doing now, how their philosophies have changed, you know, what have they seen recently, done recently, and that becomes, you know, the encyclopedia.
Yeah.
And it kind of goes back to what you're talking about having the, you know, the kind of isolated tracks, the Disney style, the Universal style, whatever else. If I talk to all of those people, we all get a little bit of the outside information. You know, we all broaden the way that we design.
Yeah,
we
exactly.
think about, oh, well, if he's doing it that way or she's doing it that way, maybe I can incorporate some of that and become better.
I think that's the TEA's secret mission statement. When you highlight the text on the website, it's like,
sure,
we learn from each other how to do the things.
Well, and there's also so many people who have worked throughout the industry.
Yeah.
You know, the days of I've been an Imagineer since I was 22 years old and I'm now going to retire at 65. You know, those days might be over.
Yeah.
Really. You know?
Especially now, yeah.
And why not get as much experience as you can from as many different locations?
Yeah.
Why not spend a little time at Disney, spend a little time at Universal, go work at Europa Park, you know, go work at Abu Dhabi at Warner Brothers, go do design all over the world. And I think that's obviously one of the things, both working at Falcons and working at Harves, that I've learned the most from is travel and working in different countries, working in different cultures.
Oh yeah.
Everybody views things a little bit differently, and there are techniques and there's styles and there's, you know, narrative that translates, but there's also so many things that are 100% universal.
Yeah.
You know, the hero's journey is everywhere.
Oh yeah.
Everybody understands it.
Yeah.
But I can deliver it in a different way.
Of course.
You know,
it's always a different way.
Invaluable.
That one gets me too. Invaluable. That always gets me.
Right.
Mike, thank you so much, man.
Of course,
man.
man.
I appreciate it. It doesn't mean much coming from me, I'm sure, but you are, dude, you're killing it, man. Like,
oh, man.
we rave about this class every day, like just texting each other. And when we're in our other classes, we're like, I wish I was in Mike's class right now. Just
blushing under my mask.
Yeah. Like just the resources that you have brought to us, even we're like not even done with this. We got like 3 weeks left.
Yeah.
Just the stuff that we've been able to do under your guidance so far. And I think the progress that I have definitely made, and all my classmates for sure have just progressed leaps and bounds. And they're using new terms I've never heard them use before because they've learned it from you and all that stuff. Yeah.
Now, the progress that I'm
great,
seeing,
the
progress that I'm seeing week in and week out from you guys is validating a lot of the initial thoughts that I had coming in here. Like, it's good to know that so much of this stuff is sinking in, it's being used, it's, you know, being talked about even beyond that. Like, you we have a 3-hour block of time, and we're routinely here for 3.5,
Yeah.
4 hours, and nobody bats an eye. It's
Yeah.
like, no, this is cool. The conversation needs to keep going.
Yeah, it's it's great that, and like we're truly blessed to have you come here and share your passion with us, because like we're all such passionate people, and I think that's probably what leads to the extra hour or two after class every time.
Oh man, that reminds me of a quote that has stuck with me for basically my entire career.
Yeah.
Rich West, he's an art director at Universal, brilliant artist, model maker, everything. We had a designer forum, like my second year, I think, working in the industry, and he was on a panel, and somebody said, "How do I do what you do?" The typical question that we all get asked.
Of course.
And his response was, "Follow your bliss." If you're happy and you're doing what makes you happy day in and day out, you're fine.
Yeah.
You're gonna get where you want to be. And I'm like, all right, man, that's what I'm gonna do. That's the goal now.
Yeah, for sure.
Follow the bliss.
Yeah. Appreciate you taking this time once again. It's one thing to have like a full-time job and then like come after work to teach. But like one of the greatest things about UCF is that, we're in Orlando, we're here, we have that access and the ability for people to do that.
It's worth it.
Program-wide. Yeah.
100% worth it.
Thanks again. Appreciate it. Can't thank you enough. We will see you next time.
Bye.
Thank you so much for listening to Theme Park School, a themed experience educational podcast. Have a question about the podcast or themed experience in general? Be sure to reach out to us at themeparkschoolpodcast@gmail.com. Follow us on Instagram at Theme Park School Podcast for book recommendations, helpful resources, and more. Theme Park School, a themed experience educational podcast, is not affiliated with any theme park, design firm, university, or trade organization. Views expressed are those of the host and the guests.